Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. I'm SocietySucks and today I'm checking out the 1972 Andes plane crash by Mitzi Studio. I know absolutely nothing about this plane crash, so let's just watch the video.
I'm sure most of you have seen a thrilling plane crash movie at some point. If you've watched a few, you've probably noticed that survival rates in such ordeals are low. Especially if a plane crashes in the mountains, where the chances of making it out alive might plummet even faster than the plane itself.
Close to zero.
That's why the story I'm about to tell you is truly chilling, literally and figuratively speaking. I am talking about the Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571 disaster, also known as the 1972 Andes plane crash. This event became one of the most extraordinary survival stories taking place in the vastness of the Andes mountain range. And just like the plane, we are going to dive right into it. On October the 13th, 1972, a plane departed from Montevideo, Uruguay, carrying a rugby team to play a friendly match against another team in Santiago, Chile.
Okay, I think I actually have heard about this.
To cross the Chilean border, the aircraft had to transcend the high peaks of...
At least I think so. I know I heard about a plane crash where sports players crashed, and I think they resorted to cannibalism. So this might get interesting if that's the same story.
Of the Andes mountain range. Due to poor visibility and some impressive shitty navigation skills by the pilots, the plane started to descend for landing while still flying above the snow-covered ridges. Turbulence was now rocking the aircraft more and more, and the young guys of the rugby team were joking about how they were about to crash into the Andes, which sounds a bit ironic, considering what was about to happen to everyone on board.
Only to then crash.
By this time, the clouds were moving behind the plane, and instead of seeing a runway, the pilots enjoyed a beautiful panoramic view of a 3,000-foot rock formation right in front of them. With roaring engines, the rear part of the aircraft struck a ridge, scattering the fuselage and wings. Weirdly enough, the impact turned the front part of the fuselage into the world's largest bobsled, while the tail section went skydiving together with its passengers. The front part violently buried itself in a deep blanket of snow, killing and wounding several passengers, including the pilots.
How many survived?
Soon after, the pilot that was still alive mumbled some words about how they passed the Andes Mountains over Curico, which was obviously bullshit and a clear indication of who was fucking up the navigation part. Not that it mattered a lot, because the surviving passengers found themselves stranded on a 12,000-foot high snow-covered plain surrounded by nothing but mountains. Not long after the crash, the sun began to set, and the survivors were about to experience
you imagine
their
being
first
stuck in this situation?
In sub-zero conditions. Of the 45 passengers, 33 people survived at the initial crash.
Oh, that's actually quite a lot.
Not too shabby for a plane crashing into a mountain.
That's a lot, yeah.
In the following days, the survivors began to take inventory of any supplies, looking for food and water as well. A few guys carried luggage around, forming a big X mark near the fuselage, hoping to make the site easier to find.
Smart thinking right there.
During that time, multiple search.
What else can you really do? I mean, you're not going to survive for long here, so you have to hope rescue comes for you, because depending on how many supplies you have, you'll last maybe, I'd say, a week, 2? They are in the mountains. All that's around them is snow, so chances of survival are incredibly low.
Search and rescue planes were spotted, but none of the planes could see the wreckage, which figures, because from the air, the crash site probably would have looked like this. Good luck with that. Using a transistor radio and a makeshift antenna, the survivors were shocked to learn that the search operation was called off after 11 days.
What?
While suffering from extreme hunger, you can imagine that news did not...
Okay, first of all, they actually did survive 11 days, and that was enough time for the search operation to be called off. I don't think a search operation would be called off that quickly these days. This is 1972. This is 50 years ago. 53 to be exact. And this is in South America, so they probably cared a lot less about the people back then and in that part of the world than they do today.
Land very well either for the rugby team. It became clear to some survivors they had to take drastic measures if they were to stay alive even a few more days. By now, the choice to resort to cannibalism became a loaded discussion within the group.
So this is that
I'm
story.
talking about the moral dilemma they faced, not if they were going to have a nice dry Chardonnay to go with their friends' back ribs. Oh, and white wine was not on the menu anyway, so that's too bad as well. And even if there was any, it would have made the whole thing slightly more romantic than it should have been. Let me show you.
I'm quite sure that the cannibalism they resorted to was eating the people who were already dead, which is actually completely illegal in these kinds of situations. In a situation where you truly have no choice and somebody is already dead, you are allowed to eat that human to survive, because for cannibalism, you'll be punished, you'll be put into jail, I'm quite sure. But in a situation like this, where it's necessary to survive, you are allowed to. You won't be punished for it, because they were already dead, and it's not like you really have much of a choice. Finger foods. Foot-long sandwich, hard-boiled legs with chestnuts, chick's breast with hand-cut fries. Five pieces. Brain freeze sorbet.
Yeah, I think you get the point by now. Mildly inappropriate, to say the least. Anyway, after some consideration by the group, they reckoned that death was inevitable if they deprived their bodies from any nutrition whatsoever. For that reason, they were going to cut flesh from the bodies of the deceased. They started with the pilot, probably because he was the least popular in the group, crashing the plane and all. Not long after, they began to cut up the bodies of their fellow.
It's honestly good that they landed in the mountains, at least concerning the cannibalism part, because it's cold as hell. Those bodies, they were definitely frozen, so they would actually be well preserved. That's very morbid, but it's what you have to think about in a situation like this. Even though it was another human at one point. But now it's just a dead corpse. But yeah, it would be well preserved, and it would be safe to eat.
Passengers. By eating human flesh, they regained strength and survived the following days and night. After more than 2 weeks, an avalanche filled the interior of the plane with snow, killing 8 more people. While being buried in snow, an intense blizzard kept the remaining survivors trapped for multiple days inside the fuselage. When the storm subsided, they dug a tunnel and freed themselves, which must have been nice, considering being buried for days between yet more dead people. While searching the area around the crash site, a small group found the tail section of the plane. Inside, the men found a battery, and they figured to use that battery to power a radio located in the cockpit back at the wreck site, which was a great idea, except for the part that it wasn't going to work.
Oh.
Despite the 12,000-foot elevation, the morale in the group was at an all-time low, as more and more people died from malnutrition and exposure.
Yeah.
As a result, a final and desperate plan was forged to send out people on a hike and find a way out of the Andes mountain range towards the green Chilean plains.
Did any of them survive?
Knowing they would not survive even one night out in the open, the survivors used isolation material from the plane's tail section to sew themselves a sleeping bag. They climbed for 3 days just to reach the first summit to the west. On top of the ridge, they hoped to see the green valleys of Chile.
Nope.
Instead, they saw only more mountains, which was a bummer.
Oh my god.
Since they already ate the pilots, there was nobody left to be mad at either. 2 of the 3 men continued the journey, taking the food of the third guy to extend the hike. They slowly descended into a giant valley and disappeared as 2 little dots surrounded by glaciers and snow. After walking for 10 days straight, the 2 men encountered a Chilean shepherd, and by then the couple knew they would all be rescued. The 16 remaining survivors
Well, would they all be rescued? How many people are still alive at the actual crash site?
spent a total of 72 days in the Andes Mountains, facing extreme
2.5
cold,
months.
starvation, and an avalanche. But hey, in the end, 16 people out of 45 survived the disaster. If you
Hey,
consider
that's
the
good.
lack
That's
of oxygen,
like
extreme
35%.
cold, starvation, and being buried by a frickin' avalanche, then in a weird way, things could have been worse.
None of them could have survived. Yeah, I am surprised that they would have called off the search after just 11 days. Although I suppose you could make the argument that they believed that after 11 days everybody would have been dead anyway, which is kind of messed up, but then again, how were they supposed to know that they were still alive and that they would survive almost 2.5 months? Which is decidedly quite a lot longer than just 11 days. I also wonder if any of the survivors felt survivor's guilt for not doing more, because after they learned that the search had been called off, they could have started the plan to take a hike and try and find civilization, which means that more people could have survived. I would definitely feel guilty if I was one of the survivors, because all I would be able to think about is how, had we started the hike sooner, more people could have lived. But yeah, it is what it is. Around 35% of the people still survived, so that is still a good amount, though it could have been a lot higher. Possibly the majority of people could have lived, but yeah, it just wasn't to be. So it is what it is. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider subscribing and leaving a like. If you want to see more reactions, check out this video right here, and with that, I'll see you in the next video.